Okay, so we're back to Yud Zayin and Aleph. Lo yachpor Adam bor samach laboro. Now, as we hear, it's quite interesting. The parak opens up with "Don't dig." Now, as we said before, according to Rashi, Rabbi Yossi's not like in these Mishnahs. So, according to Rashi, Rabbi Yossi says you can dig. Yes, yachpor Adam bor samach laboro shel chaveru. No problem. Says Rashi according to Rabbi Yossi, which is the halacha, whereas Tosfos is saying that Rabbi Yossi agrees here. So therefore, like the whole parak goes nicely with Tosfos because it says lo yachpor. That's the whole thing's about. Don't dig. Whereas Rashi says, no, actually it says don't dig, but the halacha lamaisa you can dig. So lo yachpor Adam, don't dig a bore close to the bore of your friend. Now, why not? Again, we saw this before. So we have to go on velo siach, velo mare, velo amasamayim. These are all water ducts of some sort. Velo nivras kovsin, so they would have a pool to wash their clothes like our modern day washing machines. Ele im kein harakech min kotel chaveroi shalosh tefachim v'sod besid. Now here. There's going to be a shaila in the Gemara later on. What is v'sod besid? Is it I need 3 tefach to be marchik, or sod besid, or I need to do both? So Rashi here, Eila im kain. So you have to be, so Eila im kain. So you can't do these things unless you are marchik. So why? Mipnei shahacharifa hasmucha labor. Because when you dig close to a bore, machleshes kutle habor marafe oisan, and that it weakens the walls of your bore. Now, Rashi is not saying that it weakens the karka. Rashi is saying that it weakens the wall of the bore. So if there is no bore there, are you allowed then to dig a bore samach? Because you can't hear lo yachbor adam bor samach laboro shel chavero. So if there is no boro shel chavero there, are you allowed to dig the bore? Seemingly from this lashon in Rashi, there's no mazik, because you're mazik in because when you do charifa smucha labor, so therefore a charifa that's not samach labor, then there's no damage. And it's machlesh kotel habor. It's the walls of the door bore that are getting damaged. Therefore, there's no bore, there's no damage, and therefore should be mutter. Here, according to Rashi, it's just a common interaction. Now, Tosfos lo yachbor kol hani I read to isbahu maya. So Tosfos is saying that it's the water that's creating the damage. It's not the digging that's creating the damage. It's the water. The tama mishom matnus is the moisture. Kadamrin and Gemara. So later on, the Gemara is going to say that this is all because of water. It also says because of the digging. So what does the Ramban say that it's both? But Rashi is taking like one Gemara saying it's the digging. Tosfos is taking these are extremes. It seems like the Ramban is like sometimes it's the digging, sometimes it's the water, and they're the two Gemaras. That's good. But here Tosfos is saying it's just the water. Rashi is saying it's just the digging. The Tamalari v'ha amrina b'Gemara kol mara v'mara the kamachis. This is where Rashi is getting is din from, because the Gemara also says that the digging is a problem. That all it's saying that from the digging, when does the hezek of the water begin? When you start digging. The cave and the batchilas hezek have a giri delay moide Rabbi Yossi. So now what Tosfos here, as we've seen after this point, now we're saying that Tosfos is saying that Rabbi Yossi is moide in this Mishnah, and therefore it's the water that does the damage, but it's the digging creates a giri delay. However, if it wasn't because of the water, lo havitzar harchacha gimel tefachim, but if it wasn't because of the water, you wouldn't have to distance. So you have a bore. Let's say you buy land, your inherent land, and there's just a bore there. So that bore, you're not allowed to fill with water, says Tosfos. According to Rashi, you are allowed to fill it with water because you're not digging the bore. The damage hasn't been done already. So according to Rashi, the bore's being dug. You didn't do it. It's dug 100 years ago. You're just here now. So you're allowed to fill it up with water. Tosfos says no, because it's the water that's doing the damage. And according to Tosfos, if there's no bore, you're allowed to dig a bore and store peanuts there. Whereas Rashi, you can't dig the bore to store peanuts there, because once there's no water there, and then that's Tosfos has some type of gezerah. You can't store peanuts there because maybe later you'll put water there. But Pashtus is that you're allowed to dig a bore according to Tosis when there's no water, and then fill it up with peanuts. Now, this Tosis here, what's the connection between the digging? How can the digging of the bore be the giri delay of the water? Like, what on earth is Tosis talking about? Tosis needs to bring in the digging to connect it to Rebbe Yossi, and that's the water is not. The water is not giri delay because it's not starting now. It comes later. The damage starts when you're digging. What's the digging got to do with the water? So the Rav נחum, so l'chorei shlomi da harchaka gimel tefachim hi misham chacharifa the marfa hakotel. So we have two dinim. We have the you have to be morachek gimel tefachim because you dug the bore. So that digging is creating the damage. The sod besed is because of the matanusa. So we have two dinim in the Gemara. We're saying the Mishnah. We're saying that you have to distance 3. That's the damage for Rashi, and you have to sod besed. That's the damage for Tosfos. So that would all fit very nicely, but the Gemara doesn't hold by that. That's not what's going on here. So I am Drisha before Devarim da Aliyah Day Hamar, that through the digging, every time you dig, Matchil Hazek Dam Damaya, that the water damage begins when you dig it. Why? How can the water damage begin with the digging? The Harufi and Shanas Aliyah Hacharifa, because there's a weakening that happens through the digging. That's Goyrim Shematun to Damiyashi Yivo Acher Kach Bahai Bor. So that you weaken the land, and only then does the water cause the damage later. And if you didn't weaken the land with this digging now, then the water later wouldn't cause a damage later, because the land wouldn't be weak. So for example, if it was all stone, and you dig into the stone, so therefore you're not weakening the land, and if you put the water in, there's no problem. But now when there's no stone, you're digging into earth, so you dig that earth, that digging the earth is weakening the land, so therefore when you put the water later, so now that water later is going to damage the other guy's bore because you dug it. So Acher kach b'hai bor mazik laboiru shel chavero to below rafias ara lo having nechnas bor maim yain shams. This is what the Drish is saying, that without the weakening of the land, then there wouldn't be any water, so that the 3 tefachim away wouldn't cause damage to the other guy's bor if the land wasn't weakened. Sagi baha techilas hahezek have a giri delay l'chayv ha harchaka. So if he comes out that since the beginning of the hezek is the giri delay, that's enough. That giri delay at the beginning in order to mechayev you to distance yourself 3 tefachim. So we're getting somewhere of an answer. So again, further on, with pashtos kavarosim te'ena mayev ha mentortu to beit chazikim. There's having nazik echel. So it's not that the water and the digging is 2 maziks. One is so that we have the mazik of Rashi, who's a digging. Mazik of Tosis is the bore, and therefore we have the harchaka of 3 for Rashi and the sod v'sid for Tosis. No, it's all one nezek, and therefore I don't know if I need both or I need one, which is the shot of the Gemara later. The beginning is the digging, and it's the end, that's the water. It's all one hezek. And therefore, since the beginning, it's like a mazik, a long mazik, and since it's a long mazik, since it begins with the giri delay, therefore you're chayev according to Rebbe Yossi. So then here, what it says in Tosis, the ein chazeka de matuntun giri delay, even though the water itself is not giri delay. V'rak techilas hahezek hu rifui ha'ara hu giri delay. D'kol mara v'mara d'kamachis kamarafis la'ara. So each one weakens the land. If the beginning of the hezek is giri delay, kavar ein lo rishus al hezek kazeh v'lachen ein dina denoite betok shelo. So this is the teretz of Rav נחum. He's saying that Tosis is learning that it is giri delay because the beginning of the hezek is giri delay, and that's enough for you to be marchik. If we go back into the Mishnah, marchikin is a gefes, is a zevel. So zevel is the fertilizer, and the gefes is the hot olive mass, and the salt, and the limestone or the lime, and the rocks from the koisloi shel chavero 3 tefachim. And here we also have mikoisloi shel chavero, or mikoisloi chavero. That's in the aleph there. This is all from the koisel. 3 tefachim. And now here we have Osad Besib. We take out the Yo. Now Tosfos here. What is this Salayim? We'll skip it. So I guess we'll come back to it. But what's this Salayim? Avnim. They're stones. She'esh yoytze mehem. So they're like flintstones. V'lo salai nachoshe. So don't think. So these salayim sometimes means coins. So don't put the coins. You have to distance your coins from the wall. So Tosfos says no. It's not the coins, the bronze coins, because it's not the way to leave your coins beside walls. And that what it says in Yerushalmi, that there's the Tani that you hide in the with the salayim. This is the tumnim for Shabbos, so you can wrap it in like the coins, and this is the Tana that you can't wrap it. Kan b'sulaim shel kesef, kan b'sulaim shel nechoshes. So these are the coins which are using to do tumun on for Shabbos to keep things warm. So you wrap it up in certain materials that keep things hot. So here they make a chiluk of kesef and nechoshes. They could have answered also sulaim shel avanim. Shalom shel kesef. We didn't have to go to the. We could have gone kesef and stones, just like here, because salayim could mean stones, and salayim could mean silver coins. So why did we split in nechoshes and silver when we could have said stones and silver? So the whole thing was in a metal. That when you're teaching a Tani, you would prefer that the chiluk are close enough together, whereas like stones and kesef are so far away. But if you say even the case of coins of nechoshes and coins of kesef, even those that there's a chiluk there. So here we're saying that edesloim, it is you have that means rocks and not coins. Now again, Tosfos is geiris here v'sad besid, and it's not osad besid. Near a re, the b'seifa nami goris v'sad besid, because we had up above v'sad besid. So it's also down here. It's not osad besid, it's v'sad besid, says Tosfos. But look, goris o. The e garsina b'seifa osad besid imkain tishput the bereisha v'sad besid. So it will be v'sad besid tanan. So if when you say or, you have to say o. So therefore, when it says va, it means and. So that would be obvious what's going on here. Mitalo katani o sad bereisha kamo b'seifa. So therefore, I would know, and therefore we have this iboi later on in the Gemara. We're asking up here: is this and sad besid or o sad besid? Ve'ele vadai b'seifa namigors v'sad. So that's obvious, says Tosfos, from what the Gemara asks later. V'ha de b'shita leba Gemara lakaman de b'seifa havi osad b'sid. Hayina mishom te'ene chezek kol kach meruba shelo yeh lo sid lechuda. So Tosfos is saying that in the Gemara, then later on in Yud Tes, we're comparing the Reish and the Seifa. How did the Reish know v'sad b'sid at the bottom means osad b'sid? It's because these things like gefes and zevel and salayim, they're not as damaging as the water is damaging in the Reisha. And as most, especially old houses in Israel, will attest to, water damage is a killer and a key issue here. Whereas damage of olives or limestone or poop isn't such a big problem, but water is a killer. So water, maybe you need both. But the zevel and gefes, once you sad besid, there's no way that you also have to do 3 tefachim because the hezek isn't so bad. This is what Tosfos is saying there. So, marchechen of zerayim, when you're planting, and the plow and the PP from the wall 3 tefachim, and distance the mill 3 from the sheichev. So the mill is shehen arba min rechev. So you have 2 levels of the mill. You have a smaller mill on top. The rechev is like holding on. So the rechev sits on top. So the rechev will be will be a smaller diameter. Will be 3 diameter. So you have 3 from the sheichev, from what's lying down on the ground. So then you have a smaller piece by a tefach. Let's say it's 4. A diameter of 4 in the bottom and then 3 on the top. So therefore, it will cover, or it'll be so the diameter will be 3. Therefore, you have an extra tefach, or you have to be 2. So the radius would be 1 less, so the diameter would be 2 less. So therefore you have it indents. You have the bottom that goes up, then it goes in by a tefach, and then you have the thing sitting on top. So the rochav kind of rides on top of the shoichev, but that's a smaller piece, and it's 1 tefach radius less. So therefore it's 4 from the upper bit because it's further away, and it's 3 from the bottom one, which is closer in. Okay, so in this picture you got the wall here. Then you have the shoichev, which is the black. On top of the black sits the red, which is the roichav. So the roichav is smaller than the black. So therefore, if you're distancing from the wall, the black to the wishwall to here would be 3 tefachim, but to the roichav would be there's an extra tefach here, so therefore it's a 4 there. Ve'esatanor shaloisha min akalia shehen arba min hashefa. So the same idea what's going on here, that you have the wider base of the oven, and then you have the rim or the upper rim of the oven narrows, and therefore it's 4 from the upper rim, and then it's 3 from the base. So kalia perishorach beten tanor tsar milamata ubeemsius marchiv, so that you have it's narrow at the bottom, and then in the middle it gets bigger. So if it's just as simple as the mill, where on the bottom it's fatter, but here we're saying that at the bottom of the tanor it's actually quite narrow. But the kali is like the beten, it gets fatter in the middle. That's where so the widest point of the oven, that's 3 tefachim. Uba emsias marchif, so in the middle then it gets bigger, and its bullet sticks out, and a yotze kashir tefach, so it's a tefach more than everything else. Umiyotzev made server oil, and then from the middle it gets narrower as it goes up, and therefore there's an extra tefach that you gain than at the top, than from the belly. But he says at the bottom it's quite narrow. Okay, now let's just have a look. Let's have a look at the these Rashis at the bottom. Rachaim as kashin lekotel she medinin as a karka begugel chavtan, because it's turning around and it's smashing up the stuff. So therefore, he says it's medinin as a karka, that it's weakening the ground there from the shoichev. That's the rachaim. The bottom rachaim rechev is the top one that again it rides on it, and it's narrower a tefach from the bottom one. The Tanner 3, the Tanner is a klicheres, and that it's soref bekivshan, kashar keteres, and to harden it, you put it in the kiln like other pots. And the piv lemala, the haba lekavua ba'aretz, when you want to fix it in the land, you make a binyan tit, and the avanim shahayu lo lebosses, so you make a base for this oven, and you moishev, and you sit the oven into it so that it doesn't get cold. And then the bottom doesn't get cold because of the karka. So you got to keep everything hot. And that binyan, see, with a shipuya, that binyan is made with a slant. So it's rachav milamata v'katsa milamala. Again, this isn't what Tosis is saying. Tosis is saying it's sar milamata. So Rashi's given a whole different thing. When you're building it into the ground, you're supporting the oven. That's just like a klicheres. You're supporting that by sticking it into this bosses, into this. So racham lamada v'katzim lamala kamida satanor tachtoina kari kalia. So therefore, this bosses is called the kalia. The kuri. The top bit is called the edge. Climber, the edge of the kalia of the bosses. Shepetach alona v'lefisha havlo shel tanor kasha, because the heat of the tanor is for the kotel tzarich lacharchoikoi. Apparently, like in America, if you have special ovens or whatever, let's say if you're opening a bakery, there's you can't put a bakery wherever you want. You have to have special walls and this type of stuff. I'm sure the New York got it from the Gemara here. Now, again, all these things at the top, we have different types of water. The Tosis lo siach v'lo mara. Siach will be like a long ditch. The mara will be a cave. And what's the mara? So the cave would be like a for mikveh or for washing or bathing in. I've also seen mara being the idea of a crypt. As you see in some of the missions deal with, you dig into into the stone and you're making crypts where you have different places where you put the dead people. So you have like this stone face, and then you build a little house where you put the dead people. So like you say, oh, well, the father and mother are going to go in this little wall, and the brother and the sisters over there, and they dig in. So this is they say if you're digging the crypt, you have to do it three tefachim away. But Tosis learns the water. But who din chartzin v'naritzin. So these are all types of water ditches. That the charitzin is like a square ditch, and the naritzin is like a V ditch. Vahani nakat. So why do we only have these specifically these water things, and not the charitzin, the naritzin? So we deal them because of bor. Once you say bor, you do the other two. So it's ragel that we have bor, and we have siach and mara. And one of the reasons they do this is because there's three main ways that you're using the water. You're using it for like drinking water, and you're using it for bathing, and using it for washing. That's like the usual reason, the usual way. Although the nivrachas kovsin really would be the washing as opposed to the mara and the siach. But anyway, so siach and mara, this is ragel with those things. Bahadi bor. If amasamayim v'nivrachas kovsin the ein ragel l'shenoisim gabe bor. Why? What are they doing here? Because if we're just doing the things that are ragel with bor, what are they doing here? Because there's other things. The naritzin are not ragel with bor. They're not here. So the Gemara says that I need them. I need both of them. However, because the Gemara is going to say why I need them. However, that it doesn't explain why am I law have shaminin lahumi bor. Why can't it? Didn't explain why can I not just learn them from bor? The matzi lemeimor, the bor v'siach, the imkin to face. Since they're deeper, then they have a harach. Since they're deeper, they need three of a harchaka. But those that are not so deep, so therefore I would think have a havamina that they don't need such a harchaka of three, and I will get away with a smaller harchaka, and therefore have to put them in. V'itana hani, if I had those, I would have a havamina the bor and siach, so that if I said that the nivrachas koivsin and the amasamayim were three, and then I wouldn't need to have bor. Itanahani, if I did those, and I have them in the bor and siach, because they are deeper, I would need more than three. Therefore, I need to have all of them. And the Berachah Para, Bava Kamal Titanan, one who digs a bor, the siach and mara. And then the Gemara asks, why do I need all of them? Now, Tosis has just said that I just teach siach and mara, just agav bor. But in Bava Kama, I'm saying, why are you teaching them? I need them davka. But they just get taught where they love davka. But Gemara has them. So it's nicha the lo havi letana leminto ayabor, because over there davka and Bava Kama, they shouldn't have included them with bor. Kaven dechtiv bor bokro, because over there we're dealing with a bor that's in a posuk, and that posuk is just the bor. Therefore, I'm only dealing with bor over there. Eila have lemitnis bor lechude. So since you're in the posuk, it just said bor, and therefore we should only teach bor. So therefore, anything else is with bor is not in the posuk. Therefore, I need a reason why it's there. Whereas in our case, it's just bor without a posuk, and therefore I teach the others as well. So moving on to Yud Zayim on base, Pasach Babor V'Sayim B'Kotel. So the Mishnah, Pasach Babor, don't dig a bor, and it says, Eli Imkein Harchik Mikotel Chavera. What do you mean distance from your kotel? We're distancing. I can't dig samach labor. See the wall. So I'm not digging close to the bor, and then what do I mean I have to distance from a wall? What's it got to do with the bor? Now here we have brackets, and basically there's a three-way machlokas. Now if you see here, listening. So again, listening is you shouldn't teach Ele Imkain. This is what we should have teach. Why didn't you teach Ele Imkain Harchik Mi Boiro Shel Chavero? Why didn't you? So you should distance from the bor of your friend, because you said gimel tefachim. So that would make sense here. So don't dig a bor close to the bor of your friend unless you distance from the bor of your friend 3 tefachim. I mean that makes sense. Now this is in brackets here. So Amar Abaye says in Tema Rabbi Huda Mikotel Boro Shaninu. So from the wall of the bor we learn. So then we have the text here Velisnei Ele Imkein Harchek Mi Boro Shel Chavero Gimel Tefachim. So these are the same. So this is the same word. So Lisnei Velisnei. So Rashi learns like our Gemara here. As he pesach babor, samach labor shel chaveru v'hadar sayim ele imkein harchik mikotel. Have leila mitni ele imkein harchik miboru de ilu mikotel kotel habanoi agabe karkahu. So Rashi is saying that a kotel is a kotel above ground, and a bor will be below ground. So therefore, if you want to say harchik from the bor, that's not a kotel because kotel is above ground. So now, here is the teretz. Rashi's bringing Amar Abaye mikotel boro shaninu. That's the teretz. Kloimor hi kotel de katani mikotel boro kamor she'afu kori kotel. So Rashi's now in the teretz. He's saying that the side of the bore, as you dig the bore down, the bore underground, that's called the wall of the bore. And that's so. Even though it's not just a kotel, is a kotel above ground as opposed to a kotel below ground. And then you see Rashi here has velisnei mi boirish shel chaver after all this, which is the girsa here. Velisnei ele im kein harchim mi boirish shel chaver gimel tefachim. He just doesn't have the ele im kein harchik. He just lisnei mi boirish shel chaver. I mean, it's the same thing. And this Rashi needs a bit of understanding because it really doesn't make so much sense. We would know mikotel kamar. So again, this is after we've already answered mikotel boro shaninu. Okay, so I would know. So now, after saying mikotel boro shaninu, we should still say harkemi boro shel chavero. Why? Because I'd know it's mikotel. Don't tell me kotel, tell me bor, and I would know it's a kotel. So now we have two different types of things. The halal boro is just the whole of the bore, and then we have the kotel, which is the kotel of the bore. If it was a halal of the bore kamor, ein ze kaines latok shalo klum. He's not entering into his property anything. Well, like why not? Upamim shehu soiser af kotel chavero imhu rachav mishalosha. If it's wider than 3. So then he's also soiser in the kotel chavero. So what's exactly Rashi saying here? Because if it's machal boiro, therefore he's not entering at all into his. Why not? And sometimes he destroys the kotel of his friend, and therefore I would know that it would be kotel. So we'll have to go back to the Rashi. Hakamash malan the kotel bor shalosha tefachim. So the kotel bor. The kotel of a bor is 3 tefachim. Nafkamina lemechachum memkar. The bor and its walls I sell to you. So therefore you have to have the kotel of 3 tefachim. Now, to get this clear, if you have a bor that is 10 tefachim wide, so then the entire diameter of the bor is 16 tefachim. Because you have the 10 tefachim of the halal bor, as Rashi's calling it, the halal boro. According to Rashi, this is a half minute before the teretz. So from halal boro is will be the 10, and then the koisel, and then the teretz when we say the koisel boiroi, hakamasha demanded tanya mikosel boiro, we learn in it that the koisel of the bor of the first guy. It fills the full 3 tefachim. Therefore, the wall of the kotel of the bor is 3. Therefore, it's got the 3 on the other side as well, but it circles the whole bor of 3 tefachim. So therefore, it's 10 plus 3 plus 3. He also has the distance from the meitzer. That the digging of the halal isn't separated from the kotel ela shalosh tefachim because he's connected to shalo because he goes into his own. So why do you only have to distance 3? Because the other guy distanced 3. Nimsa shalosh tefachim shekoin is gam zeh letoch shalo hakotel maleim from the kotel v'ashmin and shir roichav kotel bor. So every time that you come to be soimach on the meitzer, when you come to the border, you have to go in 3, so therefore it's a kotel of bor. And this really ties into what Rashi's saying up here. Because he's saying that the other guy has had to koines into his rishus 3 tefachim, And therefore, if I only have to dig 3 from the halal of the bore, I'm not entering into mine at all. So you have this distance that Rashi's expecting the other guys are already being koines into his rishus by 3, which he says here, shehu koines atok shalo. So since they're already separated in, if I'm only going 3 from the hole, therefore I'm on the border mamish. Therefore I have to be distance 3 from the kotel. And therefore I enter 3 just like he entered 3. Nafkamina mechach memkar v'im tema menalan shel kotel harishon hu havi shir harchokan min hametzar v'halo lo havi lechaver bor somech lametzar upligi ba abai v'rav v'sheminin leila abai de amar rishon ena tzarech laharchik. So maybe he doesn't have to distance at all. Again, this is the beginning. After the sugya, we start with this itmar. We go into Abai and Rava. Itmar goes into the Abai and Rava as to whether you can go onto the border or not. That's going to be a big sugya, which we'll come on to later. But Rashi is touching on it already. How do I know that maybe he did go up to the border? How do I know? Tiritz ha sheminin leila abaye gufa to ukme kishabo lechayfer bebasachas sheshneim mechuzuki laharka kol echad v'chashlosh tvachim. So this is really a teretz coming on later, which we haven't seen yet. But even Abaye, who says you don't need to distance, still you get 6 tefachim and it's 3 and 3. Which we're going to get into this whole thing of 3 each and what's going on there. However, the key is that the bore, you have the halal of the bore, the hole of the bore, and then it gets a wall of 3. So the bore, so again, if you have a bore of 10, it's actually 16 wide because it's got a wall of 3 all the way around it. Now that's basically Peshat in the Gemara according to Rashi. Now Taisvis, but conscious geiris basar deshan because basar desheni because of boro sheninu. So he's garis after we answer mikosel boro sheninu, which is up here. This is the mikosel boro sheninu. You give that answer, you give the geiris velisni ele imkain harchik mi boro. So this second lisni, Taisus says ain't a nira. So Taisus does not have this second lisni ele imkain harchik mi boro. So according to you put this gimel tefachim from lisni in brackets according to Taisus. Now Taisus will actually not have this above either. Taisus doesn't have this brackets, and he doesn't have this either. He doesn't have this whole thing. He'll just say, my kamash malan, ha kamash malan. Ve'ena nira kamosha she'eferesh. So he's going to explain that it doesn't appear that it should have that girsa. Ve'i garisla, hakik garisla. Right, and if you're going to garisla, that's how you do it. Now look, pasuk b'bor m'sayim b'koitel, pasuk b'bor m'sayim b'koitel, the listening. So Taisus would put it here. But he does. He says it's an e-garis. He doesn't garis, but if you do it, you put it at the top here. So Rashi doesn't garis it here, and now he's going to see elim kain harkmi bor v'kain mashma mitoch perish Rabbeinu Chananel. So this is basically Rabbeinu Chananel is garis this in brackets. Rashi is not garis it. Rashi is garis here, and no one else is. So this is what's going on. So you'll have different understanding. So again, Rashi is kind of funky. A way of understanding that that even though that I know mikoisel shel boiroi sheninu, even though I know that this bore has this koisel going around it, I should still say boiro shel chaverov. But we don't like that, says Taisus. Now Rabbeinu Chananel v'afal gav de bereisha meniach ki perach patach bakad v'sayim b'chavis lo kamasai v'lisnei im chuzak. So Taisus doesn't like this listening at all, because if you look at in Bava Kama Reisha Maniach, it says Pasach Bekad V'Sim B'Chavis. It doesn't say, well, listening, just don't do that. No, it teaches you something, and it says that. So Lo Kamasayim V'Lisnei V'Im Chuzak Bal Akad doesn't say you should flip it around. Ein Lashon Gemara Shava. Sometimes we marich and sometimes we mekatzer. So that's not a kasha here. That's him defending the parish of Rabbeinu Chananel, but Taisus wouldn't have it at all. So this is going to be Taisus' terrace, what he said upstairs. The Mikoso Boiro Shanino, Kloimar, Lo Michala Bor. So again, we have the Kaisel of the bor is the distance of the 3 tefachim that the bor gets around it, and the Chalal of bor is just a hole. Eila Mikoitel Sheyesh Labor, Sheharishon Haniach, so that there's a Kaisel going around the bore, that the first guy left around the bore when he dug his bore. So again, the first guy is then distancing 3 tefachim. And Mahach Milsa, the Rav Yehuda, Daika Lekaman. So from this matter that Rav Yehuda is saying, we're being medayik later on that it's Asur Lismuch. Now again, this is, we have basically the idea of, this is what Abaye and Rav are going to be arguing about, that things that you're also to be soimech. But if the other guy isn't there, so you have to be distance your bore 3 tefachim from his bore, and that means from his kotel of his bore. Therefore, there's a six away from the whole of his bore. So your distancing of 3 is only giving your own bore a wall. So when you distance from the kotel of his bore, means he gets 3 for his bore and you get 3 for your bore, and that your kotels match. Your kotels are on top of each other, touching. So you get a kotel of 3, he gets a kotel of 3, and therefore from the hole to the hole is 6. So if he doesn't have a bore, maybe I can put my hole right up against the meitzar. Can I put my hole right up in the meitzar, and then my wall will go into his reshus, and then the pashtus, and then what Toys is going to say, we're going to see it's a bit of my clokus, then you have to go 6 into your own reshus before you dig your hole, because each one gets 3. So is it mutter lismuch or asur lismuch? Because if the guy doesn't have a bore, again, we're going to see the sugya there, why yes, why no, so we don't know what they're talking about, so you can't really have it, but just basically, if the guy's not there, now the simple svara will be, am I a mazik if there is no nizak? So pashtus, you're not. How can I be a mazik if there's no nizak there? Now you can tell well, you will be a mazik in the future. So we can examine that, but, so, I can dig my hole right on the border because you don't have a bore there, and therefore I am not a mazik because there's nobody being damaged here. And when I'm weakening the ground or putting water in it, no one's getting damage from it, and therefore Shalom al Yisrael. That would be called mutter lismuch. And also lismuch means even though he's not there, he can't. Now, why is the guy going in 3 tefachim? Says Tosfos. Elam mikotel sheyesh labor sherishan heniach. See this? Mikotel sheyesh labor sheharishan heniach. So the first guy left 3. Therefore, we see that even though the second guy doesn't have a bore yet, he's already distanced 3, and therefore we can be medayik lekamon that's asur lismuch. That the first guy had to leave a kotel. So since the first guy was already leaving 3, therefore we see it's asur lismuch because he's the first mover. The first mover, if it's mutter lismuch, the first mover doesn't have to distance. Uparach minela Abai. We asked this question to Abai because Abai says it's mutter to be soimech. Again, we haven't really seen the sugya, so we're not going to fully understand what's going on, but you can understand as you fall through. V'hashta lo efshar lemigros v'lisni. Now we can't be goyres v'lisni. Ele imkain harchimi bor de imkain have a masham mechalal bor, because if so, it would be that we're distancing from the hole, not from the wall. Umash apirish contrast. So therefore, that's why Tosfos doesn't goyres anything. And after we've said mikol to borish and I can't go on like Rashi is saying. So again, this is the idea. This is what there were the guys. The first mover has moved in 3, and it's kotel spor shal chavero. So now we're saying that the Mishnah is saying, I'm not distancing from the hole of my friend, I'm distancing from the wall of my friend. So therefore my friend has had to have moved in 3. The Mishnah is already saying koistel shel bor chavero. That's on the border. So therefore I need to distance 3 from his koistel. Therefore he's already moved in 3. Otherwise I'm not distancing from his wall. So therefore the first guy has already gone in 3. And now Rashi's saying, so we see from here, it can't be halal, because if it's halal, then I'm not koines at all. Because I would then, since he's already moved in 3 and given me a koisel that I can be distancing from, so therefore just say bor, and I'd know it's not the halal, because if it's not the halal, he's already 3 away from me, and therefore I'm not koines at all. Nichnas into Yerushus 3 when I'm not nichnas in at all. Okay, so in this picture, he says here that when you have the bor, you have to. Originally, I would say, that I'm there. My hole is right on the meitzer. But then it says, so now you can see my koisel bor is going into his rishus. Yeah, so the first mover is always going to have nothing on the other side. because the Mishnah says that you're coming to dig your bore, so you're the second mover, and you have to move away from the bore of your friend. Therefore, the Metzias is there's a bore already there. So now there's the Meitzer, but smaller. So that's how I'm understanding the Mishnah to start with. So the hole, that's I have to distance 3 from the hole, which will put me there. Which would put me there like that. So now it says no, it's from kotel shel chavero. Therefore, the kotel of chavero is on the border. So he's already gone into his reshus, and therefore I have this 3 tefachim kotel of chavero, and therefore I need to distance like this. So Rashi says, just teach your bore from your friend because he's already entered in. If I have to go from the hole, then I don't nichnas at all. I go like this, and shalom nisa. There we go. So then for my hole is on the border. I have a nichnas at all. My kotel is on top of his kotel because he's already moved in. So therefore, again, it starts off the Mishnah. It says from bore of your friend. We says no, from kotel. It says so he's got the kotel. He's got that 3 tefachim. That's what you have to distance from. Therefore, he's already nichnas into his reshus. So therefore, Rashi says it's poshut. I need to do that because if it's that, then I didn't nichnas at all. So that's the Pshat Rashi, and Tosfos is saying you can't learn that. You can't say that that's. Now this is why you see. This is Tosfos' earlier point. Because soimech mutter lesmoch would be you can put the bore right there. And again, my wall's going into his reshus. Yeah, no problem. And Rabbi says that my wall's going into your reshus, and Rabbi even says you have to go like this. You have to be marchik. Yeah, 3 from here. So instead of going here to the border, you're like add here. That's, whatever, we'll see that, but that's how we were learning the Mishnah originally, and then we say no, because the boro. So therefore he's left the koisel, and then he comes here, and then not there. So ein zeh konis lok shelo klum. So Girsis Svaro the chokto. So it's a very difficult way to understand this. Aval ein nira. Isn't it? Devadai itanami boiro have yamina mechalal boiro. If he said before, I would have said, yeah, taka from the whole kamor. V'shari lesmuch, and then we have the ears where so therefore it would be mutter to be soima because the first mover has done it. Because if it said halal boro, then the first got built there. And now you can go from the kotel boro be here, or with boro you just have to do 3 from the. So then, but I would think it'd be mutter lismach. The fact that it says mikoisel boro, therefore there is a koisel. There's a koisel on the meitzer. It's not a bor on the meitzer. It's a koisel on the meitzer. So therefore, that's also lismuch, because that's lismuch. I'm right there, and that's also lismuch. I have to give you. So if I'm there, I'll be also lismuch, and then you have to go here, and then no problem. Or you'll have 3 from the actual halal. So therefore, our walls would go over each other, but still, he's on the border, and I'm 3 off the border. That's the way I would learn it. Why can't I learn that way? And that's what the Mishnah is telling me. So Rashi's saying that you have to have a 6. It's poshut you're going to have a 6. Everyone takes 3. But Tosfos says, no, why not? That's mutter lismuch, and then you from the hole, and you're only doing 3. The im harishon harchik me'elav, and if the first guy has, whatever reason, he didn't, even though it was mutter for him to be soimech, he decided to distance 3 and only his wall. So mina meitzer gimel tefachim or yoter. Yeah, he could maybe his bore's in the middle, because again you have why are they digging bores? That we're going to see this in it's a field that's made for digging bores just means a field that is not irrigated, that has irrigation issues or whatever, so you're digging bores for irrigation. You can dig the bore wherever you want. You don't have to have it right in the border. Maybe you have it in Amma from the border. Havamina de hasheni yechol lismuch. So the second guy can then go all the way to the meitzer. He can dig his hole, tack on the meitzer. So that's how I would learn it. Like Rashi's difficult. Ve'im kain tzarich l'shanot mikoitel mikoislo lashminin de aser lismuch. L'rava. So therefore, it'd be also lismuch coming to Rava. Again, this is going back into how we're going to learn the upcoming sugya. So Rabbi who holds that you can. Therefore, you each get 3. We can garsa. Again, this Tosfos is saying that we don't have this velisni. The listening doesn't make any sense here, as he's explained. However, he says we can. Yeshli yashav girsa parach aliba de abaye. The liba didei kaima the lisnei eila imkain harchamibur shisha tfachim. So the whole lisnei is going on Abaye, who holds his mutter lismuch, because according to his shita, you have to do 6 tefachim, and therefore since you have to do 6 tefachim according to his shita, so therefore you can still ask that question and say bor. So that fits into what basically Rashi said if it's only on Abaye, because Abaye is clear that he needs 6. at least according to Tosfos. Again, that's going to kind of be clear later. And after we do the sugya later, maybe you can go back over the Tosfos and you'll see all the points he's making. Rava doesn't need this nafkamina. The hakam ashmalan to asur lismok, because Rava's learning this asur lismok. That's how we said above. Elabaye the kasaver motor lismok. So therefore, what's the point of the 3 of the wool? The kamar lamay nafkamina ilashmina de boy harchaka 6 tefachim lisni elim kain harchek mi boro 6 tefachim. What is a 3 tefachim? Just say 6 tefachim. Eila the nafkamina is mechukumemker that the wool gets 3. If you sell a bor, you have to sell the 3 around it as well.